Hi everyone. So today, for today's tutorial, I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and although I'm going to be painting an abstract painting in watercolour, obviously, I wanted to try talking live as I do the video, just so that I can talk through the processes, what I'm thinking about as I'm putting the paint on, which I think is a bit more useful for you guys and also a bit more natural in terms of me knowing what it is that I'm talking about rather than just watching it afterwards. So it's going to be another semi-abstract. I did a little practice first just to have a look at the colours and the blending and make sure I was happy with it. So I'm using a very thick rough Arches paper at £300. It's because it's so thick, it takes an awful lot of water and it gives a nice finish. So the paints I'm using are Holbein granulating paints today, which are a little bit different. So we've got ocean blue, if you can see that. So it's got both blue and green in the paint. So when it granulates, it separates out those two colours. Then we've got some Daybreak orange, which again is orange and then has more sort of brown, orangey, yellowy tones to it. And then some Nightfall Indigo, which is mainly blue, but also has a little bit of turquoise and aqua as well. So I'm using those today. I've got a small palette that I've already got set up. I've got two water pots, my little bunny pot, which I always use, even though it's a bit small, but I really like it. A really large jar with water, a little bit of salt, because we'll sprinkle that on for a nice effect. And then I also swatched out my colours so that I knew which ones that I was using and I was happy with how they looked together. Right, so let's get started. So to begin with, I'm using a large 3/4 inch flat brush and I'm taking the Daybreak orange and I'm just going to run that along the centre, but slightly sloped downwards, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Then I'm going to thicken that up, so I've added a bit more water so that it becomes more liquid. And then when we run our brush along it, it's going to give us some nice bleeds above it. So I'm thinking of doing a few more of these, but actually as live streams. So you'd actually be able to ask me questions or send me any comments you like while I'm actually doing the painting. So if that's something that you might be interested in, then please just let me know and I'll see if I can get that set up. I'm a little bit of a technophobe. So I'm in my mid-40s and I can use technology, but I'm not very good with the really new stuff. So live streaming is a bit of a new thing for me and I am going to need my husband for that. Much as I don't like to admit it, I will need him. So I've used clean water and I've just blended that along the top. And as you can see, the more brown tones have separated out and given an almost pink tinge to it, which I think looks really pretty. Then for the top, we're going to use the Daybreak Nightfall Indigo, so the blue. We're going to just water that down a little bit. And we're just going to start to sweep that in and blend it down with the bottom layer as well. And then we'll use just a touch more to come in from the side there and see if we can get it to separate out a little bit. So I'm just using a little bit more water now in a slightly lighter mix, just to sort of blend that up. I don't want it too streaky, so I'm adding in a little bit more water to see if we can blend this top section a bit more, so we haven't got any hard edges. I was just conscious that this looks like it's a little bit streaky here, so a little bit more paint. And then literally just water at the top, and then I'll blend that down. So the Nightfall Indigo, even though it's one of the granulating paints from the set that I bought, it doesn't tend to granulate as much as the other colours. So if you have a look at the blooms that have appeared here, if you can see, they have actually got a nice sort of pinky colour at the top, which I think is really pretty. But the blue has stayed pretty much blue. And I'm just trying to blend in that line a little bit more. Okay, I don't want to go over it too much because I don't want it to look overworked. And then I'm going to take some more of the orange, the Daybreak orange, and I'm going to dab it in this line again to see if I can encourage some more blooms, because I thought these looked really pretty with the pink edges to them. Now make sure the mixture is watery but still with plenty of pigment in it, because we don't want any nasty blooms, so we don't want it to take the colour away. And then just dab a little bit more in, make it a bit of more of an interesting line, a little bit more paint. And I think that's it for the blooms. We could go over it a bit more, so I could sweep across there to see if I can soften up those edges a little bit. But then I also need to then run that brush across the rest of the sky so we don't get a hard line. And then we could go in just a tiny bit more, but I really don't think you need to. I think that's probably the most bleeds that we're going to get from that. So we'll have a look at the ocean blue. I really like the ocean blue because after a bit of experimentation, I realised that it says it's blue, but it's definitely green. It's definitely more of a turquoise green. So you can see on my palette here that it's very blue and dark here at the top, but sort of turquoisey aqua here at the bottom. So I'm going to mix that up a little bit more because I want it to separate out on the page rather than just on my palette. And then we're going to sweep that in, touching the line in sections to see if we can get a few more bleeds going down, because I think that looks really pretty. And it's so bright. It's definitely like a nice sort of aqua sea. So somewhere like the Bahamas. Oh, that'd be nice. It's very miserable here in the UK today. We've had a beautiful summer. We've had the most sun that I think we've had, that I can remember, for quite a long time. But then all of a sudden the kids have gone back to school this week. My daughter's gone back, she's 9, so she's just starting middle school. And it has been torrential rain with thunderstorms and all kinds of stuff. So it's been a bit changeable. And then today, this painting's making me think of nice, clear ocean blue, ocean seas. So if you have a look here, I put on quite a bit more paint on, and it's really starting to separate out. So we're getting that granulation, which is really pretty. Now I have got quite a bit of colour here on the left-hand side, and I wanted it more bold down here. So I'm just taking a clean, well, fairly clean damp brush. My bunny pot water is not clean anymore, so we're going to have to go for the other pot and just see if I can pull a little bit of that paint from the left hand side of the water so that it looks a little bit more graduated, and then sweeping it down, and then just go over it a couple of times because it looks a little bit streaky. Okay, yeah, I think I prefer that. So while this is still wet, which is great, I'm going to take just a little bit of salt. Now this is rock salt, so some of these are quite large. They have been in my little salt dispenser, but some of them end up still being quite large. Now be careful where you drop the salt, because we only want it in a few areas here at the front. And we'll take off that really large piece there, because we don't need those. You don't want the rock salts to be too large, because you're going to end up moving the paint underneath and creating a really large bloom. So this might actually be a little bit too wet. I probably could have done with waiting a couple of minutes, but we should still get effect if I sprinkle in a few more little pieces, and then we'll see what that gives us. So these Holbein paints that I'm using came in a set. I think it was probably the landscape set, as I usually paint landscapes, so I would have thought that they would have come from a landscape set. I think we also had a Wonder Forest green as well, which is also really pretty, and it also has yellow tones to it when it granulates. And I think there was maybe one other colour as well. I think there was a purplish colour, which was really nice. So they give you granulation. If you're doing a really large landscape painting, they can be really useful in creating texture and interest without having to paint every little section. So they'll granulate, they'll do their thing, and it'll give you a nice effect. So that's just a little tip for using granulating paints. And these Holbeins, I think they were from Jackson's Art. That's a online UK store which sells all kind of art supplies, and they do a really good range. And also these little sets, so you don't have to buy big tubes, you can get a little set of colours which are really good. So this is sort of starting to granulate now. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see. Ooh, let's move that up a bit. So if you have a look here, it's starting to move the paint underneath, and it's giving a little white and yellow bloom underneath this aqua colour, which is the ocean blue. Now, usually I'd wait for this to fully dry, but I think because the paint is so wet, excuse me, when I put the salt on, I think it's going to be too wet. And I think if I leave it on for too long, it's going to create an awful lot of blooms. And I wanted quite a subtle effect. So I'm just taking a large brush, and I'm just going to very, very carefully try not to disrupt the paint underneath. Just brush those salt flakes off. Oh, one's quite stubborn there. Okay, I think that's got rid of most of them. So that's given us quite a bit of a pretty effect, almost like some little flowers. As it's quite an abstract piece, we don't need to put in detail, it's just a suggestion of something going on in the landscape. So we'll take the tape off. I hope you found that useful. I like doing abstract pieces, but I find that if I go from doing a detailed landscape to then painting something like this, I'm almost not in the zone. So I'm thinking I'll probably do a little mini series. And there we go, the finished piece. So it's still very abstract, not an awful lot going on. I like the granulating paints, and I do like to use them for abstract pieces because it does give you that separation of paint, which gives you interest without having to paint everything. And then using the salts moved the paint underneath and created this blooming area, which I probably should have done when it was a little bit drier, and it has moved the paint a bit more than I was expecting. But hey, that's painting, isn't it? You don't quite know how it's going to turn out. And then with the blue for the sky, it's very simple. It doesn't really granulate, it's the Nightfall Indigo, so just bear that in mind. You're more using it just for the blue colour than anything else. So if you would like to see any other abstracts, please let me know in the comments. It's been lovely having you today, and I hope you enjoyed the slightly more chatty format. If you didn't, then please let me know as well. I'm very open to criticism. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.